Well, we are on to roster breakdown number 6. It's Louis and Grant back for this time, the Newcastle Eagles preview. One that we've been waiting on to see how they would finally come together with their team. And here it is. Louis, how are you on this one?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Grant. Glad to get into it.
Yeah, let's get really into it. And you'll see it's even just the way in which our kind of image is kind of drawn up there. It's a very big, heavy squad. Very few guards, a couple of wings, of 3 or 4 of which have got experience of our league. So it's a really interesting makeup in what Mark Stewart was going to have as Newcastle coach. Let's just get into it. So when we look for the team, there's a couple of players that really stand out. But when we think about it, the last time Newcastle or Mark Stewart came back into Newcastle after a Eurobasket campaign, they had a lot of changes early in the season. Not saying that will happen, but it does just feel overall that they're lacking in another scorer. Like a name that instantly pop up. Like we just think to last season, like someone like a Seneca Knight. Like, let's be honest, this team is lacking someone like a Seneca Knight.
I mean, go on. Finish.
Yeah, and just that player could really transform what this team would do. Like, it does just feel like they're one short. And that's just how I feel about them.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it, during the signing process, someone like a Seneca Knight kind of at the free spot, because you look at the kind of like their possible kind of rotation at the free spot, it's kind of Josh Wood-Hibbert or Cole Long, because of obviously how many bigs they have, or players who lean more so like to being a 4, Cole Long as kind of a 3. That kind of means that you're lacking in sort of skill, practically speaking, at the 3 spot. And then, at the 4 spot, they've probably got they probably start someone like a Marco Anthony, who's not really that kind of, scorer, etc. So, and obviously they're lacking in shooting at the 4 spot too.
Talking about individual players, so let's start with, both of us kind of think this team hinges on 2 players at the moment, really firing for them. And let's start with those 2. So let's go with Rayshon Taylor, the 6'1" guard out of Southern Illinois. What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, so he's kind of like so he's more so kind of scoring centric as a combo guard, which I think kind of might lend to some issues later down the line, because I mean, if we think about kind of Newcastle's guard issues last season, obviously they started with that dude from
Jordan Spencer, and they had Jordan Spencer as well.
And they had Jordan Spencer as kind of like a backup. Obviously, they have Mitch Clark as kind of like a one that I'd really want or prefer as a backup, to be perfectly frank. So that, in terms of playmaking and kind of ball movement, etc., that might be kind of an issue. Because in terms of playmaking, Rayshon Taylor, basically, if he sees a pass, he's kind of like a reactive pass. If he sees like a pass open, he will hit it, but he can get quite kind of tunnel visioned, if that kind of makes sense. He's definitely more so looking for his shot. He's kind of like a multifaceted scorer, very dangerous kind of behind the line. He's got good shot making off the dribble, kind of behind the line, as kind of like a ball handler in the pick and roll. If you kind of leave him open behind the line in the pick and roll, he will fire. He's good at kind of coming off screens, kind of moving like behind the line, kind of firing. He's got a quick kind of trigger from 3.
He really, that 3-point release really, obviously for me, it reminds me of David Sloan from a few seasons ago for the Glads. Like that kind of quick off the dribble go score put up a 3. Like, it does really give me, when I first seen his clips, it really gave me that kind of vibe.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. Like, another thing he's got is kind of like he's got good craft in the pick and roll. Like he's decently physical, and he loves to use jail, which means, kind of keep the defender on his hip, kind of block him from kind of getting in front. He's really good at doing that. he's decent getting to the rim. He's got a decent handle, decently creative handle, decently shifty. So he's decent at getting to the rim. He shot like I think mid-40s at the rim in the half court. So he's kind of like a little bit undersized potentially, and also in kind of the conference he's in, which was the Ohio Valley Conference, which I remember correctly, which is kind of lower end. Kind of the size of that league or conference is a little bit smaller because obviously it's a lower end D1 conference. So yeah, in terms of his finishing, it might be a little bit of a struggle. His mid-range game, he shot like mid-30s percentage-wise. He's not too great at kind of creating enough space in the mid-range because obviously, his shot making is terrific. Yeah. If he gets space, he will hit. But because he's kind of smaller and not very long, that's kind of an issue, obviously, at the rim and kind of in creating space in the mid-range. But defensively, he's decently physical again, but he might be a tad slow. I don't know. But basically, he'll be kind of probably like an average defender. But yeah, that's kind of my summation of kind of his game.
So the other one that we have to look at then, we'll talk about this actually, man. My next thought we'll talk about during the depth chart chat. But when we look at the next player that we're really expecting big things from is Caleb Huffman, 6'4" guy, played in Denmark last season. He's really, if we compare him to previous Eagle squads from last season, even he's really got to be this year's Mike Okauru.
Yeah, especially in the squad makeup, he's got to carry a lot of basically offensive juice, basically. But he's a two man that's very quick, like Mike. He's a very big threat in transition. That immediately kind of comes off the page, very quick in transition. He's got, like Mike, he's got a good pull up game from free. Versus Mike, because obviously he's very quick and he kind of leverages that. He's got a very quick crossover. He can get into the rim and he attacks kind of, if he's off ball, he attacks off the catch very quick. Yeah. He's very decisive in doing that. Difference between him and kind of a Mike Okauru that I immediately saw is kind of his level of kind of both vertical athleticism and kind of physicality in terms of as a finisher at the rim. So Mike Okauru, if we remember correctly, Mike kind of he was pretty big for a guard, right, physically, and that kind of leveraged in kind of his ability to finish at the rim, because if he got to the rim, kind of, he loved that kind of floater, didn't he? He loved to use that floater, and his level of strength kind of aided him as a finisher, whereas Caleb Huffman is weaker as a finisher. Basically, he's weaker as a finisher.
Is it maybe fair to say he's more of a scorer rather than a finisher? More of a shooter, sorry. Yeah. Maybe more of a shooter?
Because it's obviously kind of a mix. Yeah. He is obviously, he's looking to get to the rim quite often. I think it's kind of fair. Yeah, he is probably, versus obviously Mike was a lot more kind of linear, get to the rim. I think versus Mike is probably a little bit more of a shooter or more shooting orientated.
Yeah, if that's a good way of putting it.
Good way of putting it. But yeah, he's a little bit kind of versus like a Mike, he's a little bit more undersized, and I think that's why he struggled in Lithuania, for instance. But he can obviously he took a lot of ball handling responsibilities in Denmark. He can make pretty good reactive passes again, but he is again primarily looking for a shot, as kind of like because he can kind of play the one. He kind of initiated a little bit in Denmark, but he's he is looking for a shot again, which kind of two guards, that might be a little bit of an issue. Defensively, he's decent, but yeah.
Hey, I want to come back and talk about Mitch Clark, because I want to combine that with Malcolm Smith. If we go to the bigs now, in terms of, let's go Marco Anthony first. He was one of their first imports announced that he was coming. 6'6", playing in Finland last year. I know he's one that, from Newcastle fans we've interacted with and yourself, are really curious. Curious is probably the word to use. Curious to see how he fits into the league. I've watched a bit on him recently, and I said it to you the other day. He cuts really well to the basket. He really has a decent mid-range game. He really gives me I like to use comparisons. It's always been like that, but he does give me kind of Zach Irvin type vibes. Doesn't need the ball in hand. Does a lot of off-ball movement, and I think this could be one of, and you're going to probably disagree with this massively in a minute, but I think he's one of these surprise signings that actually I think fans of Newcastle will really enjoy.
No, I think they will enjoy him. I think a good comparison kind of is Deshaun Allen.
Yes.
He's kind of like a yes. He's kind of like a very skilled, kind of undersized 4-man.
Yeah,
kind of 4-5 guy that has a decent kind of handle, and in terms of kind of being like a kind of undersized face-up guy, like a Deshaun, who's kind of like 6'5", is probably listed like 6'6", but he's definitely like 6'5", 6'4". More face-up, physically very, like Marco Anthony is built like he's like 230, probably 230 pounds. He's very physically strong. He likes to kind of post up sometimes, and kind of uses physicality around the rim, but he's very much an under the rim kind of scorer if he does get there, if that makes sense. His shot is messed up. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. His shot is ugly as hell. It is ugly as hell. Do not, and I really hope Stootle was not expecting him to shoot at all, because that's not going to happen. He can hit in the mid-range. You're right about that. Whether that's kind of consistent is another matter.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of like a lower usage guy that is also a very good passer. His value is mostly defensively, be it a very big rebounder, etc. His physicality, he makes a lot of defensive plays in terms of steals, in terms of kind of decent at getting blocks. Obviously, physically, he's a tank. He's basically unmovable, which might kind of lend itself to synergizing with another guy we'll talk about later. But mostly kind of like a defensive piece. Like, I talked to this Romanian scout who really, really wanted Marco Anthony as their 5-man, because he's excellent at handoffs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, very decently switchable. Because it said he was a swing man on his media thing. He's definitely not that. He's a bit slow, to be perfectly frank. If he's guarding guards, that might be a little bit of an issue. If he's guarding the free spot, I think that might occasionally be a little bit of an issue. But he is versatile, like very physical, etc.
Is he not quite defensively at the basket? Also, pretty good. Not an amazing shot blocker, but actually he's an active defender. Definitely under the basket, an active defender. That Alan Aikens is another good comparison, I suppose, for that. But will play bigger than 6'6" whilst defending the basket as like a 4-man.
Yeah.
Let's go on. Let's talk. So one thing I was going to ask, when we look at this Newcastle team, two things leap off to me. It's interesting that Stuart was going back and looking at the English domestic game in terms of NBL 1 or teams now in the BCB, bringing in Mitch Clark from Reading Rockets and Malcolm Smith for the Derby Trailblazers. There's loads of examples of players coming up from that and succeeding. There's loads of examples of players coming up that level and not making the jump. I find it really interesting to see how something like Mitch Clark, goes every summer and plays in the Aussie NBL 1, which a lot of people do. Malcolm Smith, 6'5". How old is he? Mid-30s?
Something like that.
And you go, it's a really interesting time to see him make that step up. To me, if you're going to have someone like, let's go Mitch Clark first. 6'1", played for Reading last season, played across Australia, dual passport holder. That feels like a good pickup. And it feels like from talking to people in NBL, people are really interested to see how he takes that step. You're going to say something else. Remember what we said?
Okay, because I watched him in the Sheffield game that they played in the SLB Cup, so I might have a little bit of kind of knowledge about kind of his projectability in terms of the league. But he, in terms of things he does do very, like, exceptionally well, or very well, is his shooting ability. Like, his off the dribble game from free, if you're not up to him, like, he will shoot and he will knock it down.
Yeah.
If he's, off ball, whatever, they can run him off screens. Excellent shot maker. That's undeniable. He didn't turn the ball over much in NBL or NBL 1. I think that might be a little bit more of an issue because I saw in Sheffield kind of like they sent two to the ball and like some screen pick and roll situations, and he kind of struggled a little bit with their size and kind of athleticism. I think it's fair to say he got a few like worrying turnovers, but he is, he's a good willing passer, as kind of like a ball handling one. My concern is kind of the athletic translation to our league, kind of what that means. And well, I think in NBL 1, which is the where we have synergy stats for how we shot at the rim, I think he shot like 40 or 30% or something like that, which is kind of a little bit worrying. But it's kind of his athletic translation. He's not quick at all. I think he's going to really struggle in that regard. Kind of his handle in terms of kind of like creating advantages, which is obviously kind of a huge thing as a guard. Obviously with a screen, that's kind of like an artificial advantage creation there, but he kind of like his speed and kind of capitalizing on that and getting into space. I think he might struggle a bit in terms of that, in terms of creating on ball, practically speaking. I think he will be decently good off ball, but I kind of worry about kind of how many advantages he's going to create and what that means in terms of playmaking, etc. And defensively too, I kind of worry a little bit about his quickness and kind of what that means, because he is pretty strong. He will be able to go on the 2 spot, but it's just if they play him as a 1, where obviously we see the deficits elsewhere on their roster, like Rayshawn and kind of Caleb Huffman, where they're not kind of playmaking oriented, where Mitch Clark is, it kind of makes it difficult as a fit, because obviously you want Mitch Clark kind of being more of a playmaker off the bench, but it makes it a little bit more difficult, but whatever.
All right, let's before we talk about some of the other players, let's bring up the depth chart, because I think that will help kind of talk us through the next part. When we look at the Eagles depth chart, we've talked about that imbalance. There we go. So the next player, we kind of started talking about Malcolm Smith, and it feels like obviously if that was a dual passport player, it would be a good move. But counting as an import, when I feel as if Marco Anthony is a similar type position player, however, doesn't require the ball. Where Malcolm Smith, it feels like he's going to require the ball to go to work. And I'm really curious to see how that will work when Huffman wants the ball, Taylor wants the ball. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, and we've discussed this a lot. Yeah. So what he does do well. He's a, in NBL D1, he was creating, a lot of points on ball as kind of like a post player. He's kind of like a face up kind of post player that, he's got a decent kind of mid range game. He's kind of decently quick. In terms of kind of attacking, kind of bigs and fours. He's decently quick at that and kind of attacking downhill. Face up.
Yeah.
One thing that I did actually kind of really like was kind of his passing ability a little bit, which I didn't really expect to see, but he kind of like because he's obviously looking for his own shot out of the post mostly, but in terms of if he does kind of see an advantage, he's quick to kind of kick it out, or if he does see like a pass, he's quick to kind of kick it out.
Yeah,
he's pretty decent at passing out of the post. That's the thing. Defensively, he is, pretty decently versatile. He did guard multiple positions, and kind of like because I think he's more of like he's more of like a 5, to be honest, in the places that he plays. But as a 5, he's quite switchable. You'd be able to do interesting things. But then my ultimate question is, like, what is the value of a player that has to be on ball, to be valuable, can't shoot the free, undersized at our level, 6'5", doesn't protect the rim at all. So defensively, as that 4 or 5, that's kind of a little bit lacking. And kind of as an on-ball creator, like he shot high 40s percentage in NBL D1, which means it's kind of like a maths equation. If you have, so many possessions, you don't want them to be taken up by, so like inefficient post possessions where, because Malcolm Smith isn't, as a roller or as a finishing around the basket, he's not going to be finishing above the rim. He's a below the rim finisher. You don't really want too much of that. It's not very valuable player archetype, really. But he does have his pluses.
I mean, we've seen those pluses as well, Louis. Like, sorry to interrupt, but we've seen those pluses in the last few years when Derby have played in the trophy or the cup, whatever competition it may be. But those one-off games, someone like a Malcolm Smith, can really step up and make a difference in those one-off games against SLB teams. Do you know what I mean? But that's I think the biggest question is, how will that adapt for a full, however many games, 32 game regular season?
Yeah. And with like greater size and athleticism in our league and in like a smaller role, because I don't think he's going to be wanting him to be scoring that much.
Absolutely. Let's go. We've not talked about Brett Reed yet. And that's one of the positions, again, he played in, played against the Eagles in ENBL, a player that Mark obviously had scouted for that. We see him being the starting 5-man. What's my question on Reed? Like, is he someone that's, like, when you look at other 5 men that's announced around the league right now, how do you see him kind of fitting in?
So immediately, he's a very mobile and kind of quick, kind of face-up 5-man that wants to kind of attack off the dribble, attack downhill. Like and as a passer, kind of as a driver, kicking out, he's pretty good. He's a very skilled player. Defensively, he'll probably be pretty decent at hedging, and kind of getting back quick, recovering. So obviously there's that. As a finisher around the basket, he's pretty efficient, kind of against some of the kind of recruitment kind of elsewhere in the league. So let's say so his one kind of, because against Newcastle, he really, really struggled physically against Darius Defoe and Delpesh, really struggled. Darius was kind of pinning him at the rim, basically, pinning him under the basket.
Yeah.
He was posting up, he was backing him down easily, kind of shedding him. So that's kind of the issue. Physically, he's just not. And then kind of as a vertical athlete, he's not very good. So as a rim roller, finishing as a rim roller, kind of as a rim protector, he's not, because obviously his physicality too means he can, if you can kind of finish through him. And that kind of showed itself in Sweden, where his team, he got a lot of points. He was efficient as a scorer. Yep. But his team in Sweden went 3 of 29 or something stupid. But okay, centers elsewhere. So you see him versus a Matt Nicholson, and you're because obviously Matt Nicholson's, we saw in Switzerland too, he's mobile.
Yeah.
He's gonna struggle, and then kind of a Jalen Deloach, because some of the bigs elsewhere kind of have his level of mobility, but they're just a little bit more kind of physical too. So if you're looking at kind of talent level, absolute talent level, it's kind of a little bit difficult. But he definitely has his qualities. So.
Yeah, it very much feels like this Eagles team, there's a lot of unknowns, and it could be so far in this preseason, we've not been massively high on them, which tends to mean they'll probably have a really good season.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's no question that they can't, if you know what I mean. They'll be organised. They've got guys they can put up quick scores, whether it's Huffman, Taylor. Reed is a mobile big, which I'm curious to see how he does. And then we've got the wily vets in the league of obviously Defoe and Ward Hibbert. You've got Cole Long coming back, who we don't really have time to touch on too much on Cole Long, but he began making a big impact though. But playing, I think a lot of time his biggest impact was playing as a small 5-man almost at times last season.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. All right, we're going to call time on this one because we could probably talk about Eagles for another full video. But yeah, let us know what you think. Get involved in all the chat. Thank you to everyone who's watched so far. Please like, share, and subscribe. We're almost at 100 subscribers on the YouTube channel, so please help us get there. From us next time, you'll hear, I think we'll do the Gladiators next. So we'll get on the Gladiators next, and as we get ever closer to the season starting. So again, thank you for listening, and you'll hear us next time.